Well, good evening, everybody. Everybody out there in Fedora Nation. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, as the boys from Emerson, Lake and Palmer used to sing. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. Welcome back to our latest session of Chattin on the Porch, an interview show where we bring together some very interesting people to talk about very interesting things. And tonight's guest is going to be talking about something that everybody is seeing in one form or another, be it on the internet, the TV, or wherever you get your news from. And there is a lot to discuss. We are on YouTube, we are on Rumble, we are on Twitter. So if you haven't done it yet, send out a message to your friends, tell your mothers, your brothers, your lovers, your sisters, and your misters to get their butts in here, because this is going to be a fun and entertaining conversation and a lot to talk about. So we're glad to have you here. We're going to let everybody settle into their chairs wherever they may be in the internet world, and we'll start talking about what's going on. Again, thank you for joining tonight for Chatting on the Porch. Again, I'm Brian Trippett, the Front Porch Conservative. Now, no doubt there are individuals here who are old enough to remember the election of 1984, the It's Morning in America campaign of Ronald Reagan, which led to one of the biggest electoral landslides in American history. I bring up that campaign to bring up a particular point. 1984 was the last year that a Republican presidential candidate carried the Empire State of New York. Ever since then, there have been 9 presidential elections, and a Democrat candidate has carried New York by an average of 23%, including the most recent presidential election of 2020 when Democrat Joe Biden defeated native New Yorker Donald Trump by the historic average of 23 points. But ever since then, something's been going on. In the latest round of polling done by Siena College on behalf of the New York Times, there seems to be a shift. You'll notice that ever since September of last year, there has been a decided shift away from Biden. Now, he still has a lead. Who knows what's going to happen in November? But he's off the historic average by about 14 points, which got me to thinking, is it altogether possible that for the first time since 1984, New York State could be in play in a presidential election? Well, I decided to reach out to somebody who is on the ground and in the know, which brings me to my guest. Matt Antar is a native of New York. By his own admission, he's a former liberal who had a rude awakening as to what the ideological left in America was all about. When the party he thought best represented what he believed in and whose candidates he had voted for all his life decided to respond to a novel cold with authoritarian edicts for 3 years, Matt realized it was time to leave not only the Democrat Party, but the ideological left as well. He switched his registration to Republican after he concluded that the GOP, in his opinion, were the only politicians who had any kind of sense during that whole period. Matt now serves as the Finance Committee Chairman of the New York Young Republican Club and as the host of Antar on YouTube and Rumble, which you can see it right here. There is his YouTube page. Please give him a subscription. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the inestimable Matt Antar. Matt, welcome to the Electronic Front Porch.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, glad to have you. Glad to have you, sir. Glad to have you. So I did a little background or a dive into your YouTube channel, and man, there's some there's a lot of good material there. I mean, not just the videos, but even just stuff about the background. We'll get into all that in a minute. So let's start by talking about you. Tell us about Matt Antar. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was your family like? And acting? I did not realize this until I started checking out your YouTube page. So tell us all about you, and then we'll get to where we're going next.
Well, thanks again, Brian, for having me. So I'm a native New Yorker. I'm native actually to the island of Manhattan. So grew up in New York my whole life and was pretty trained to be a good little liberal. And there was no reason for me not to be a good little liberal. Well, there were actually plenty of reasons. I'll take that back. But there was in my head, there was no good reason for me not to be a good little liberal in my liberal utopian city, or so I thought. And until the year 2020, when it was painfully obvious to me that the sort of draconian response that as you alluded to, the party I voted for my whole life was implementing in response to what ended up being somewhere between a cold and a flu, depending on who you were. And I seem to be the only person in my liberal circles and my liberal friends and anybody that I knew at the time who was saying anything. In fact, the fact that I was sort of bringing up that this was not in accordance with our way of life here in America and our Constitution and all the norms that I thought knew and loved about this wonderful country we live in, the more everybody I spoke to pushed back at me and ended our relationship and didn't want to speak to me anymore. And just utterly, I mean, for the first year or two, I didn't speak to anybody except for people in my family. God bless them. They were sort of on the same page as me. But anybody outside of my family, I didn't encounter any sort of even an iota of understanding, which made me sort of realize that this was a pretty systemic issue within quote unquote liberal circles, which is ironic because nothing about the Democrat Party response to COVID was liberal. So that's sort of my story, how I ended up as a Republican in New York and one of the biggest Republican organizations in the city and doing what I do now. So.
Well, I mean, I have heard many people who would identify themselves as ideologically liberal, and then COVID came along. They watched the response of their fellow liberals, and they're like, what? Huh? Wait a minute. What the heck are you guys doing? This makes no sense. I thought we were all about, inclusion and tolerance and accepting people's choices and everything else. And you guys are like, y'all taking the dive over the cliff here. Y'all, what the heck's the matter with you people? And but yours was like almost like, nope, see ya, I'm out of here. Bye. I mean, some people gradually come out of political liberalism. I mean, to this day, define in your mind what you call being liberal? I mean, would you still identify yourself as politically liberal, or where are you at on the ideological spectrum?
That's a somewhat nuanced answer, I think. I've certainly, I don't identify as like, I'm certainly not like a religious conservative or anything like that, any kind of like classic like picture that you might think of like a staunch religious conservative evangelical. I'm not that.
Okay.
I'm never going to be that. Okay. But have my views sort of migrated more conservative in these past 4 years? I'd be lying to you if I said they didn't. Sure. And I only really came to holding more conservative views when I allowed myself to. And what I realized was that deep down, I actually always held certain conservative principles that is obvious to me today, but I sort of stamped that out or just didn't talk about it back in the day because I guess it wasn't important enough to me back then to make waves with my liberal friends. But you asked me an interesting question. You asked me, what do I define as a liberal? And the answer is, well, what do I define as a liberal of the 21st century, or what do I define as the dictionary definition of quote unquote liberalism? Because I think those are two very different things. I think that I'm certainly, I would say probably in the center. If you're talking about classic liberalism versus classic conservatism, I would put myself probably dead center. If you're talking about the left of the 21st century versus the right of the 21st century, and the left calling themselves liberals and the right calling themselves conservatives, then I'm firmly on the right. But I don't think that conservative and liberal have the same definitions anymore. So it's hard to, for example, someone in New York City who will tell me that they're a liberal, that doesn't mean that to me the dictionary definition of liberalism anymore. It means 21st century leftism, which I'm staunchly against.
Sure.
So that, I mean, and to define that, forgive me for being slightly long-winded, but to define that,
Go
I
right
mean,
ahead.
classical liberalism is basically, to me, like, I want to live one certain way, you want to live another way. We respect each other's choices, and we're nice to our neighbors, even if they have political differences for us or they live a different way than us. And we have this sort of collective notion of America is about freedom and the freedom to live how you want, to do what you want, to create your own destiny.
Sure.
To you have the opportunity to make a go, to be at the highest levels of society, even if you came from nothing. That to me is liberalism, where the government doesn't impose any kind of system that doesn't allow you to live your life the way that you want. 21st century leftism, I'll be less long-winded with this, because 21st century leftism is agree with me or you're a Nazi. And that is just so illiberal to me. And not only agree with me, but you're a Nazi, but like, if you're in the I don't agree, if you're in the camp of people who don't agree with them and therefore they see you as a Nazi, they also don't think you should have the right to, let's say, be employed. Or that's where the whole like Antifa doxing thing comes from, which I actually experienced very recently. It's all fine, but
Okay.
I did experience an attempted doxing. Well, I lost my train of thought. Oh, right. They don't believe that you, let's say, have the right to have a job, or have the right to, let's say, if you take it to the COVID time, you don't have the right to go eat in a restaurant if you don't take a certain medical product that they want you to take. And you don't have the right to speak freely if your beliefs are that everybody, regardless of their race or their gender or any other immutable characteristic, should have the same shot, but one should not have preference over another ever, regardless of what the race or the gender or the whatever is. They don't think that you're allowed to have those opinions. And if you do, they want you to suffer societal consequences for that. That's what 21st century leftism is, and that's what they call liberalism, which I don't think it is. But that, anyway, I'm being long-winded, but that's sort of
now, Matt, I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell every guest that comes on here. I am Southern right down to the bone. There is no such thing as long-winded. There's just if you got something, you can. It's like the analogy that I put is, I'm like the fellow that opens up the gate and has this glorious thoroughbred by the rain. I'll open up the gate. I'll let that thoroughbred see that wide open field. I'll take 2 steps back, let go of starter's pistol. You just take off running, and you just go as long, hard, and far as you want to.
I
So don't
appreciate
worry
that.
about being long-winded. This is the beauty of what we do. Time is an irrelevancy. So for those of you who are just stopping in, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I am joined by Matt Antar of the New York Young Republican Club. We're going to be talking all things New York City here in a minute. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on Twitter. Thank you, everybody, who's stopping by. We've got people over on Rumble already. One of your best friends in the world, old Brent from the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, says, Matt, Jesus is your savior. Accept it. Hopefully I'll get you two on my Sunday night stream. Listen to this guy doing commercials for his own stuff. Jeez, Brent, come on, give it a break. I mean, you're awful. Absolutely awful. And woo-hoo. Matt, did you freeze on me? Tell me you're still there. Either you're asking me to paint a portrait and you're sitting very still, or you have frozen on me. Oh no, I think he froze. Oh no. Matt, pop out and pop back in if you can hear this. He's frozen. Okay, Matt, I'm gonna okay, he popped out. He heard me then. Yeah, come on back in when you we'll get you back up and then I'll go through some of that again. I know, man. He's like, that's just, man. He's giving me the look. It's like, oh, geez, I didn't think I was that boring. Okay, he's back. Hang on, folks. How much of my rant did you hear?
Sorry. Barely any of it.
Okay. Well, your good buddy, Brent over there on Rumble is like, hopefully I'll get you two on my Sunday night live stream. Listen to this bum. He's doing commercials for his own stuff on my channel. It's like, what the heck, man? No, Brent, I'm just messing with you, man. I love you. But yeah, we're here on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on Twitter. We got a wonderful audience with us tonight. And so let me ask you a question. I was going through your YouTube channel, and I did not know this about you. Acting. When did you get the acting bug? I mean, and is this the lifelong dream occupationally, or what is the joy of acting, and what is acting for you at this point in your life right now?
So yeah, I mean, both my parents came from theater backgrounds, and I sort of caught the bug in I would say middle school, high school. I actually went to performing arts high school in New York City, a very professional caliber performing arts high school in New York City, and I majored in acting in college, and pursued the career professionally. I had a few wins, but it's a notoriously tough industry. So there were a few things that I was involved with. Certainly didn't reach any kind of like celebrity status, but the entertainment industry now is somewhat incompatible with someone who's outspoken with the views that I have. So that's and to be honest with you, I mean, you asked me where is acting now in my life. It's not too involved in my life right now. I keep some connections, but it would be a tough thing for me to dive really headlong back into that career. I mean, you know, if somebody wanted to give me like a small project to work on or something, and you know, they had no qualms about, you know, doing what I do on YouTube and being politically active in New York, then I would probably do it. But to get majorly involved in the entertainment industry, they would probably not have me. And if they did have me, it would always probably be a point of friction, at least right now in this day and age. And I don't know that I just don't know that would work.
Okay.
That said, you know, I did acting for so many years because I love it. I mean, I love to get into the head of somebody who's not me, and I love to really, you know, try to explore, you know, what makes people tick, and what, you know, the different kind of ways that human beings interact with each other. And that's really all acting is realizing that everybody is a human being, and you can actually relate to any character that you play. I don't care if it's like the worst villain in the history of cinema. There is something you can relate to about that villain, and you get yourself in somebody's head enough, you can kind of understand them. And I always found that fascinating. I always found it fascinating to try and understand people and understand humanity. So that's what kept me going as an actor, for, you know, an actor with side hustles and doing all the things that New York actors do before they, you know, make the big time. But that's what kept me on that track until 2020 kind of derailed that. But yeah, that's, you know, it's still an art form that I appreciate and love. I wish that the industry wasn't so woke, for lack of a better word, because it's insufferable in a lot of ways now. But that's the industry. That's not the art form. I still have a deep appreciation for the art form, and I still love to do it. There's limited opportunities for me to do it now, but it's definitely, any actor, any serious actor will tell you, you're basically just studying humanity and learning more about people and how they are and what makes us human. It's actually really that simple when you get down to it.
Oh yeah, and I saw on your channel that you'd done or had a conversation with the great Clifton Duncan, and he
Yes,
has been absolutely talking about how woke the theater industry in New York City and entertainment is in general. And folks, if you have not seen that interview that Matt did with Clifton Duncan, I've got to go watch it too. But I'm going to recommend it to you because I've seen both of these gentlemen, give interviews, either being the interviewer or the interviewee. And to get these two gentlemen together, you need to go to Matt's channel and check this out and give him a sub while you're there. So let's talk about studying humanity. New York, the average New York City resident. I've got to give some observations from the outside looking in because present company excluded. New York residents are the strangest creatures walking God's earth. Well, now wait a minute. In this respect, New Yorkers are tough. They don't take any guff. Can play rough. Are some of the most independent cusses in the world. Have some of the kindest hearts of any people on this planet. And if anybody needs a reminder of that, go back and look at New York City in the days after 9/11. You saw some of the most heart-wrenching and heart-touching acts of humanity committed by the residents of New York City and on behalf of the residents of New York City. And it was amazing to see the heart and soul of the people that make up the Big Apple. That said, however, New Yorkers have a very strange tendency that I do not quite understand. For all their independence and toughness, they are absolutely locked into voting Democrat. I've never seen anything quite like it. Now, that trend was at least in my opinion, you stop me where I'm wrong. That trend was subdued in the years when Rudy Giuliani was mayor and even in the Bloomberg years because Bloomberg carried on the policies of Giuliani, didn't really make any changes, didn't make any waves. And then rolled in de Blasio, which for about, 8 or 12 years? I forget how many years he was mayor.
It was 8. It felt like 12.
Yeah, probably more like felt like 20.
Yeah.
And then you have now his honor, Eric Adams. And I had some high hopes for Adams coming in. I thought, okay, he's a Democrat, but he's a former cop. This guy's walked the streets of New York City. This guy is in touch with people. I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt. Then I found out, this guy's no better than de Blasio. What is it with New Yorkers and this love of Democrats who, for lack of a better way of saying it, just messing them over every time they turn around? It's almost like, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, and I'm not asking you to defend everybody in New York City here, but I mean, what is this tendency with New Yorkers and Democrat politicians?
I think that's tough to answer, but I'll give it a try. So you mentioned Rudy Giuliani and Mike Bloomberg, which were interesting, and I'll also add to that that during those years, the governor of New York State was for most of those years George Pataki, who was also a Republican.
That's true. That is true.
So New York had citywide and statewide Republican politicians at the time, which was interesting because you mentioned that we haven't gone red in a presidential election since 1984 or 88.
84, Reagan's landslide over Mondale. Yes.
Okay. So that is interesting. So I mean, what it tells me is that New Yorkers are liberal hearted, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it's sort of what you were alluding to before. There is a point at which they won't take crap anymore. And that's, I think, what happened with Rudy Giuliani. Because if you remember, I mean, I don't really remember. I think I was 3 years old when Giuliani was elected. So I don't.
Thanks, Matt. I really feel youthful and energized with that comment. I appreciate it. I'm just messing with you, man. Go ahead.
I know. Giuliani from my understanding, that's basically why I bring that up, is because I don't really have a memory of pre-Giuliani New York.
Sure.
But to my understanding, New York was a crime pit prior to Rudy Giuliani.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, because before Giuliani, the mayor was David Dinkins, who was a Democrat.
Right.
And before Dinkins, I don't know, but I think that there was a lot of Democrat proceed. It was Ed Koch, right?
Yeah,
before
Ed Koch, Dinkins, yeah.
And I think, actually, from what I understand, and again, this is predates my life, but from what I understand, Koch actually cleaned up New York a little bit.
Yeah, he did.
And I think he was a Democrat, so
He
kudos.
was.
I don't really care what party you're in. If you do good things, then you do good things. But from what I understand, it was really backsliding under David Dinkins.
Yeah.
And New Yorkers were, and again, I'm not super I don't know who was it. I think it was Dinkins running for a second term against Giuliani.
Dinkins was running for his second term against Giuliani. This would have been 93, if I remember this correctly.
Yeah. 93. So what happened? People finally said, people in New York who, again, are sort of liberal hearted and would tend to vote Democrat. They'd been voting Democrats in the presidential elections ever since night. So they would have voted Democrat in 88 and 92. Said, I don't care if Giuliani's a Republican. This guy is promising to clean it up. And guess what? He delivered on that promise.
Oh, yeah.
He really, the introduction of broken windows policing, I talk about that a lot on my YouTube channel and on my Twitter. The introduction of broken windows policing was something that I know worked, because when they took it away, the crime started to come back.
Let me stop you for 1 second. For those who may have never heard the term, what exactly is broken window policing, and how was it applied in New York City back in the day?
So broken windows policing, and forgive me, I don't know where it ties into the term broken windows, but okay. I'll define it just as a theory of policing that basically says that police take enforcement action against smaller quality of life crimes, and they make it really inconvenient for people to commit those crimes. They will issue summonses. They will make arrests when it's appropriate. And what do I mean by smaller quality of life crimes? Well, I mean graffiti. I mean hopping the turnstile. I just did a video on my channel about how it's an epidemic in New York City right now. But during the Giuliani and the Bloomberg years, actually, fare evasion was pretty aggressively enforced in New York City. Meaning, if you take the subway in New York, anybody who lives in New York takes the subway at least once in a while. Mm-hmm. If you take the subway in New York and you decide that instead of paying your $2.90 fare, you're going to opt to jump over the turnstile instead, and there happens to be a cop that sees you during the era of broken windows policing, that's either going to be a summons, or in some cases that's going to be an arrest.
Okay.
So I give those two examples, but you understand what I'm saying. Is the graffiti, it's hopping the turnstile is theft of services, but it's theft of $2 worth of services. It can be classified as a smaller crime, but they're still going to be enforced. And what that does is it deters people from even doing those smaller quality of life crimes, which means the quality of life goes up. And that accomplishes two goals. One, that when quality of life is better for people, they're less tolerant to little crimes going on here and there, right? Like if a guy, like public urination, let's say, that's a thing that's gone up in New York. It's really disgusting. People kind of, will go and pee on the side of a building, and it's disgusting, right? Yep. That is a quality of life crime, right? But if quality of life crimes are being deterred, then if someone decides, I'm going to go pee on the side of a building, New Yorkers are going to be a lot less tolerant to that, because we have a nice city that we're living in. We have there's a nice, everybody understands, like, we want to keep this nice. We're happy. It's as clean as New York City can ever get. It's clean-ish. So it lowers the time.
You froze, Matt. Do 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 do. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he froze. Matt, no problem, dude. I can stretch it out. Just go ahead and pop on out, and then come on back in. You're good. So we're just waiting for the unfreezing or thawing out, however one looks at it upon the internet these days. My name's Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined by this gentleman right here, who, believe it or not, I promise you, he's not a statue, nor is he a picture. He is Matt Antar of the New York Young Republican Club. We're talking all things New York politics. We're just basically waiting for his camera to unfreeze, and there he's on his way. Oh well, thank you very much, dear. Appreciate that. I I gussied up just for you. Ah. Okay, he's back. You're
I'm
good.
so sorry, Brian. I've been
No.
having the worst internet issues in my house lately, and I was petrified it was going to happen during the stream, and it appears that it's been happening. So please bear with me if I drop off again. I gotta get Verizon in here to fix the internet.
Oh, don't worry. I've got enough ham in my system. I ought to be diagnosed with trichinosis, so I can work my way around the stage while you're taking care of whatever you got to take care of. But anyway,
I'm sorry to your
no, no,
guests.
no, no, no,
If
no,
it
no, no,
happens
no, no.
again, I apologize.
Look, people who come to my live streams realize that I have the potential to boomer just about anything. So everybody knows. And matter of fact, it's almost an expectation at some point in the night. Brian is going to do something, completely ridiculous that a host should not do using StreamYard. And it's like, well, okay, it's almost to the point there's a betting pool going, okay, is it going to happen at minute 40, minute 27, minute 50? Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. But let's talk about current New York City. There have been Twitter and the internet are a wonderful thing for guys like me because I will freely confess. I am not any kind of a professional pollster. I try to listen to him, try to pay attention, but I'm of the old school. I believe in that anecdotal evidence can be very powerful if you see enough of it trending in one direction. Now, here's what I'm getting at. I'm seeing reports coming out of places like the Bronx of African American community getting all up in arms for Trump. I'm seeing reports of the Jewish community in New York City. They're not outwardly coming out and saying, yeah, we're going to vote for Orange Man bad, but we may be voting for Orange Man bad. You got guys like Michael Rappaport, not necessarily a New Yorker, but you see him on Twitter and various other places. He's posting videos. You mentioned the phrase, take no more crap. And again, I'm not going to hold you to this because, it's you and me sitting here talking on the internet, to however many people are going to watch this video, but you're on the ground up there. You're talking to people. You walk the streets every day. The average New Yorker, they're looking at the crime. They're looking at the illegal immigration that's being bussed into their city. They're looking at the destruction. You had, what was it? 2 police officers the other day were beat up by 4 illegal immigrants. And in the space of 4 hours, they're walking out the jail. And one guy is like giving everybody the New York finger of friendship as he walks out the door. What's the mentality of the average New Yorker right now as they're watching all this happen? Are they ready to be like, I know my dad was a Democrat. I know I grew up in a Democrat household, but something's got to give. What's going on up there, in your opinion?
Yeah, so you mentioned communities in the South Bronx, and I think I saw the same video that you're alluding
Yeah.
to. There was a what's funny is that particularly Latino communities. They typically speaking, most of those countries that they come from are pretty conservative.
Yeah.
And I think the Democrat Party did. I'll put that in past tense. I think the Democrat Party did a really good job for a very long time of promising that they were going to take care of Black and Latino communities. And I think that those, I think that Black and Latinos people are realizing that Democrats don't do anything for them.
Yeah.
And I don't pretend to get in the head of people and what
Sure.
I also like, you know to a certain degree, I'm a little bit like, I don't want to paint Black and Latino communities as like a monolith, because everybody's different and everybody's an individual and they want different things. And I tried to really get out of that mentality when I sort of left the left, right?
Sure.
But there is sort of like a strong, like, whatever quote unquote community you're in, there can be a strong pull. And I think this is what Democrats were effective at for many years, decades, I would even say.
Mhm.
There's a strong pull to be like, if they say we're going to do things for your people, that that can be somewhat intoxicating. I mean, I'll take it on a personal example. Democrats are notoriously, like, telling the quote unquote gay or LGBT alphabet soup community that 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 the Democrats are the party for them. And they, and it works because of whatever it is, because maybe certain classes of people, gay people, Black people, whatever it is, there was a time in history in this country where we were treated as second class citizens. I say we, I never really was, but
Sure.
gay people that predate my existence were
Sure.
treated as second class citizens, and were, there was a culture of not of thinking that they were less than or whatever. And so then Democrats take that and they say, well, we're gonna, they do two things. They say, well, evil Republicans are going to roll back your progress, which I think, especially in the case of Donald Trump, it's been proven that no such thing happened, right? I mean, this is a very interesting election because you actually have an incumbent versus a former president. So you have two presidential records to
Sure.
compare. Usually you don't have that in a presidential election.
Yeah.
So you can say, even though Donald Trump's not the incumbent, he did actually serve as the president of the United States for 4 years. And he did not roll back rights for Black people. And he did not roll back rights for gay people or Latino people or women, or pick your group that they're gonna,
Sure.
say that he rolled back their rights. He didn't. He didn't. And I'll just say from personal experience, there's nothing I can do as a gay man that I could do prior to 2016 that I can't do now.
Yeah.
So, when people are like, "Oh, he's going to roll back gay rights," I'm like, "Spare me." He doesn't give a shit about that. And to be honest with you, neither do I, to the extent that, as long as they don't try and impose draconian anything against me because I happen to be attracted to men, and he didn't, and he won't. So
Yeah.
that's, I think I went off on three tangents there, but yeah. And at any rate, right? So, like, the South Bronx, right? They were promised Democrats are going to be better for your community, and when they're sitting there in these crime-ridden neighborhoods, when the people that they voted for are going around being like, well, we can't hold people on bail, even if they committed a violent assault, even if they did, some sort of horrible crime, like, short of like the really heinous stuff. Most of the things you can't hold people on bail anymore in New York City. The Democrats did that,
Yeah.
right? It's like, a bodega owner. You remember this story? A bodega owner defends himself against a customer who
I
attacked
remember that.
him.
I remember the
And the
story.
bodega owner went to Rikers. Talk about bail reform, when all these criminals are going out on the streets without bail, and they have the audacity to hold the bodega owner in Rikers on bail. And the bodega owner was not a rich white supremacist Nazi KKK member. He was a Latino guy in the Latino community
Mhm.
defending his store,
Yeah.
right? when you had 2020 and you had these Black Lives Matter, very interesting. I used to work at an organization up in the Bronx, and during 2020, I worked at that organization, and it was on Fordham Road. For those of you who don't know, Fordham Road in the Bronx basically is the dividing line between the South Bronx and the Northern Bronx. And it's I would say it's a pretty poor working class and minority neighborhood. So I get into work one day during the Black Lives Matter protests. I say protests loosely, riots. And, I don't know how many people remember, but Fordham Road specifically had a bunch of stores that had been destroyed during these riots. Yeah. Specifically Fordham Road. And so I go into work the next day, and everybody I worked with, who, by the way, it shouldn't matter, but I should say they were all Black. Everybody that I work with was saying, I can't believe these people. What the hell are they doing? They think this is good for Black people. You're destroying Black businesses. Every business you destroyed is Black owned because it's a predominantly Black neighborhood.
Yeah.
So you're fighting for Black Lives Matter. What about Black livelihoods of the Black store owners that now have to rebuild their stores because you wanted to tear them down? And I think that sentiment, like I said, not to speak for people who live in certain neighborhoods that I don't live in, who have certain races that I don't have, whatever. But it seems to me that they're looking around going, all of these policies by the Democrats, the bail reform, the crime, the immigration, which, by the way, you could see, like, there was a video out of Chicago where Black residents in Chicago were like, we're not for this. We're not for these immigrants. What about us? We're American citizens. And they are. And they're right.
Yeah.
So I think that all that to say is that, these minority groups that traditionally vote Democrat, I think a lot of them are going, for what? They don't only not help them, they actively make things worse.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, this is more of a New Yorker thing than any, race or specific group thing. But I think you're right. What you alluded to in the beginning, that New York, New Yorkers are a special kind of breed that, like, yeah, we are kind, and sometimes we're like bleeding heart liberals, but like there comes a point where it's like, I don't want to take this crap anymore. This is not, and not me so much, because I'll never vote for a Democrat again. But there are probably a lot of people who are like, look, I voted Democrat. I may vote Democrat in the future, but right now that's not the way to go. And I think that assessment is correct.
Yeah, I think you've probably seen it somewhere at one time or another. The film Network, great movie. The late Peter Finch won his only Academy Award when he played the reporter Edward Beale. It's the great scene where he stands in front of the TV camera. I want you to get up. I want you to go to your windows. I want you to open it. I want you to stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I think New York City is there. I mean, between illegal immigration, I mean, when you can literally watch on the internet or on your TV screen at home on your television busloads of illegal immigrants coming to the Roosevelt Hotel in downtown New York City, coming off, if they're not being sent there, Mayor Adams is converting public schools and gymnasiums into centers to house these people. They're getting full benefits. The benefits
and
of
kicking
America.
The kids out of school, by the way, kicking the American citizen children out of schools and leaving the parents to hold the bag for these illegals who have never paid a dime of taxes to our country and broke the law to come in. That's who we're catering to.
Yep.
And displacing these children whose parents do pay taxes, whose parents are citizens, who are owed something by this country. The illegals are not owed anything by this country. You broke the law to get in. Nobody owes you anything.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I've got a feeling, and I can't prove this, but I'm wondering if you could at least either back up my supposition or dispel me of the notion. Why do I have a feeling that New Yorkers are walking around, they're not saying it out loud, but in the privacy of a conversation around the water cooler or at their kitchen table or with their spouse or their significant other saying, I've done this all my life. I can't anymore. I can't with Joe Biden. I can't with Eric Adams. I can't with Jerry Nadler or AOC or whoever. I mean, when I go in the voting booth, I'm going to pull the switch. I don't know if it's going to be Trump, but it can't be what I've been voting for all these years. I mean, do you get that sense? I don't want you to divulge confidential conversations or whatever, but I mean, do you get the sense when you talk to your fellow New Yorkers that there's something shifting up there?
Yeah. So
Oh, he was about to make a great point and he froze up again. We'll hold on to that for you, Matt. Don't worry. We'll just. Do I have any requests for songs while I'm waiting for Matt to come back? Anyway, my name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. We're talking with Matt Antar, who right now is a little bit frozen, but that's okay. He'll fix that problem here in just a second. We are on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we are on Twitter, and we're letting Matt straighten some things out. Over on Rumble, we have, he knows, he's working on it. I promise, dear, he's working on it. Over on Rumble, Gypsy says, they are demoralizing we the people. Roxbury, a Boston area, going to sue Walgreens. Oh, I think he's back. Yep, he's back. He's unfrozen, or it's working on its unfreezing. Okay, you're back.
Third time's the charm, Brian.
Okay, no. You started with a. Yeah, you started with one of those Grace Randolph's. The average New Yorker, are they quietly saying to are they quietly saying to each other what you and I are saying right here?
Yeah. Okay. So what I was what I was trying to say before my lovely internet booted me was that New York. I don't speak with a lot of liberal New Yorkers anymore, and that's not not by my choice. I would love to speak with everybody of all political persuasions all the time. Because one thing I told myself when I walked away from the left was that I wasn't going to join a new cult and refuse to speak to, I wasn't going to become like, oh, I'm right wing now and I don't want to talk to any of these lefties. As insufferable as they can be, I don't want to insulate myself from that. However,
sure.
Many people don't reciprocate those feelings, and there's a lot of leftists that will not talk to me because they think certain things about me that are not true usually, but they paint a picture in their head of what I am because I support Trump or because whatever, because I have an opinion on, transgenderism or anything like that. Sure. But my point is when I do have a chance to speak with liberals, a lot of them will say to me that they get skittish about Trump, right? And they're like, well, I don't know like about Trump, but something has to change. So they all know it. Well, I don't want to say they all know it. The wokesters, they think everything's fine.
But there's a portion of them that's coming to a conclusion.
Sure. So that's why I'm trying to separate the wokesters from the
sure.
liberals, right? The liberal who probably voted for Joe Biden in 2020 and probably voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but they're not like super woke. They probably think some of the woke stuff is a little like, I don't know about all that. And, just kind of want to live their lives and, maybe have a, bit of a bleeding heart liberal kind of personality. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. And so they get skittish about Trump because to a certain degree, they still trust some things that they see on the mainstream media and they get scared about Trump. But they do, and I try to, I don't want to like proselytize. That's not really what I want to do with that. I mean, I'll proselytize on the internet, but I don't want to like do it when I'm trying to have a nice dinner with somebody who, you know, is a liberal, but that didn't disown me. You know, I don't want to sit there and be like, I vote for Trump. You know, like that's, you know, I'm trying to go out and have a nice dinner. Like,
exactly.
So I don't, but if we happen to get into the subject of politics, you know, and then they say, well, I don't like Trump. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it about Trump that, you know, that you're so nervous about, or that you're, you know, whatever that you think is going to be so bad? And usually they don't really have a great answer for me. I mean, J6 comes up a lot, and I'm like, okay, but he didn't do that. So there were, you know, some people who, you know, thought that they were doing something, did that, but he didn't do that. And they're like, well, you know, tried to overthrow an election. I'm like, yeah, but on January 20th, and I don't mean to say, yeah, but like I'm agreeing that he tried to overthrow an election. I don't think he did. But I'm trying to be like, you know, January 20th, 2021, he got on a plane and he left, right? So like he's not like, you know, he's not. So those are the things that usually come up. But other than that, like they can't really give me a policy that really that they didn't like with him. And so it's like, well, you know, they don't say this, but they'll, you know, it'll be akin to something like mean tweets, or he's unhinged, or he's blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, but what did he do? Like, okay, maybe he said something that frankly I think is funny. That, you know, I used to feel this way, but like usually he says something that like probably is like not like Barack Obama presidential, but like he, you know, he says something about, I'm like, okay, so he said something at the microphone. Okay, like, but what did he do? What policy did he enact? And they usually can't give me a good answer. So will they vote for Trump? I don't know. Will they vote third party? Increasingly likely, which that only helps Trump, because that's a Biden vote that is a Biden vote that will not go to Joe Biden. So if you can't bring yourself to vote for Trump because whatever, and you want to vote for a third party candidate, you know, all right. I mean, I'd rather you vote for Trump, but like if you really, really cannot do that, then, you know, I think that there is a lot of the New York constituency that knows that right now is not it. And they, you know, you mentioned Eric Adams when he came in after Bill de Blasio, and it's what's funny is that Eric Adams knows what the right thing to do is, but he's controlled by the party. And in some ways that makes him worse than de Blasio, because de Blasio actually believed in the communism that he was espousing. Yep. So you could just take de Blasio at face value. This is what he is. The guy's a communist. If you put him in power, he's going to do the woke thing because he truly believes that in his soul. Eric Adams does not believe that in his soul, but he does it anyway. And then you see snippets of like, you know, now he's mad at the migrant crisis. And it's like, well, dude, like there's clips of you from a year ago being like, New York is going to be a sanctuary city for the asylum seekers. And it's like, you knew back then it was going to be a disaster, but you're controlled by the party. So now you're complaining about, I don't want to hear it. I mean, I want you to do something about it, but I don't want to hear your complaints, because you were up there talking about, oh, asylum seekers and we're a sanctuary city and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you knew that was BS. Mm-hmm. So why'd you say it? Because you want money and power, and you want to be a darling of the Democrat Party. And, you know, I don't know if he has aspirations to like run for president or something. I mean, that would be a joke. But I don't know if he has aspirations beyond mayor of New York City. But it seems to me that that's what he's interested in, and he's willing to compromise what he knows is right. And in that sense, that makes him worse than de Blasio, who at least was staying true to his values, even if the values were terrible. At least de Blasio was honest about how he felt. We had to get him out because what he felt was wrong for the city. But that's my assessment of all of that.
Yeah, I have an expression. I would much rather have an honest enemy than a dishonest ally.
Yes.
I mean, it's like you say, with Bill de Blasio, I know exactly what I'm going to get. He's a communist. He is a self-admitted communist. And if you don't believe what he's telling you about his ideology, look practically at every policy he put in place. You drill down on it, it's straight out of a Marxist communist playbook, and it has all the same results as Soviet-styled communism. It brings about misery, and for 8 years, the people of New York City were miserable. Mm-hmm. And then you got Eric Adams.
Can I just interject
go ahead.
One thing? So I was still registered Democrat during the primary that Eric Adams won, the Democrat primary. Yeah. That was when I started to see, because Eric Adams was by far and away the most conservative Democrat on that slate of primary candidates. Everybody else.
I will absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree with that.
Everybody else on that slate of primary candidates was like de Blasio on steroids woke.
Yeah.
They were like scary. And so I actually voted in that primary. It was the spring of 2021. Mm-hmm. And I changed my voter registration to Republican in the summer of that year. So in the spring, I was still a Democrat. So I voted in that primary, and I voted for Eric Adams for obvious reasons. I was like, okay, this guy's at least a former cop. He has, he's better on crime than any of these other people would be. So, and not just me, but the city, the 5 boroughs, decided that he was the favorite of the Democrat, the 5 boroughs worth of Democrat voters, because we have closed primaries. So that was what Democrat voters elected, was the most conservative on that slate. And that to me was the first ding. Now he hasn't lived up to any of that, but at least what he was espousing was what won the day in that primary. And that was like my first ray of, oh, wow, we're starting to wake up. The second one was in the 2022 gubernatorial election in New York State between Kathy Hochul and Lee Zeldin.
Yeah.
Lee Zeldin came within 6 points of Kathy Hochul.
Now, the closest any gubernatorial candidate for the Republicans has been in a hell of a long time.
Right. I mean, we're talking about a statewide election in the state of New York. If the city weren't so blue, Lee Zeldin would have won that handily. But there are a lot of people. There's some people who are like, it doesn't matter. Kathy Hochul still won. I'm like, but wait. I don't remember off the top of my head the margin that Andrew Cuomo won by in his last election, but I think it was something like 23 points or something like that. You look like you're researching it, so tell me if I'm off. But
you vamp for a minute. I think I can pull this up real fast. Keep talking.
Yeah. It was something. Brian will tell what the actual number is, but it was something in the realm of like 22, 23 points. So we go from that, Andrew Cuomo defeating his Republican candidate by well into the double digits, to Kathy Hochul beating Lee Zeldin by 6 points. Now, when I saw that, all right, 59-36. Let's do a little math here.
23 points.
23 points. I was right on the money. I was right on the money.
Folks, this is proof that we bring the smartest guest to you as part of Chattin on the Porch. Not only do they know what's going on, they can do math. Go ahead.
So dude. I mean, that's incredible. That 2022 election. So in some ways, you ask, what's the sentiment of New Yorkers? And I actually would say, well, look at the last 2 elections.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric Adams versus Curtis Sliwa, that was just the 5 boroughs, but even that had some good indicators. You had a lot more of Brooklyn and a lot more of Queens, that when you look at those color-coded maps, that. I mean, Manhattan's deep blue because Manhattan is, that's going to be the last. That's going to be the last one to turn. But you had a lot more of Brooklyn and a lot more of Queens with shades of red. And Staten Island was like red. And Staten Island is always the most Republican voting borough in the city. But even Staten Island was more red in the Sliwa versus Adams election than it was in previous elections. So New York is, and then you look at the 2022 election with the U.S. House of Representatives. New York State is the reason that the House is Republican, because we made a gain of 4 House seats, and that is so. All of that to say, I give you all of those examples to say that you can take my anecdotal evidence of like, I speak to liberals and they're disenchanted with Biden and blah, blah, blah. And will they vote for Trump? Will they vote for third party? I don't know. But you can see it in the numbers since 2020.
Yeah.
That there is disenchantment with the Democrats on a wide scale, and it is only increasing. And so we are, and everything that these woke Democrats do, like in the city the other day, the New York City Council voted to override Mayor Adams's veto of a bill that so it's law now because they overrode his veto, that now police have to write reports for every single minuscule interaction that they have, including interviewing a witness, including speaking to somebody on the sidewalk who is not even a suspect. They are trying to drown the NYPD in so much paperwork. And what's the goal? I was looking at this bill, and it was like, because they want to, the one of the things that the cop needs to do is record the quote unquote apparent race of the person that they're talking to. And anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together is going to say, they're trying to get so that if the statistics from this paperwork show that these encounters are with more Black people or Latino people than white people, then that's going to be justification for them to say, see, the cops are racist and blah, 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 irrespective of them, the stats coming out the way they are just because the cops are doing their jobs. But, so and the NYPD, like the cops, the police unions are completely against it. And Eric Adams, a former police officer, vetoed the bill. That's one of the best things he did. He actually couldn't, he just couldn't toe the party line on this one, and he vetoed the bill. The New York City Council, full of these woke, and the New York City Council is full of woke, forget liberal, forget classical liberal. It's woke in the city council, except for 4 or 5 city council members that are trying their best, but they're completely overwhelmed by the woke city council members. They're up there cheering. And when I see that, I go, that's good. It's another thing. That's just another thing. And it's what's the expression? By 1,000 paper cuts. It's every little thing. And they're up there celebrating that cops are going to be buried in paperwork and have to do all this reporting instead of going out there and actually doing their jobs. And by the way, I'm not saying there shouldn't be reports that cops fill out. There's already a ton of paperwork, though. We didn't need this, that they need to fill out a whole report because they interviewed a witness. They already have to do, when they make an arrest, when they make a summons, when they do this, when they do that, they're already a lot of paperwork. There's already so much paperwork that they have to do. This is just going to add to it, and it's unnecessary. So that's going to be another thing. I think people are going to go, what the hell? They're going to go see they're going to see their city council person there and be like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? We already know that the cops have been completely handcuffed, pardon the pun, from being able to do a lot of the job of policing. And the cops know it, the people know it, and most people are not for that.
Yeah.
Most New Yorkers are not for that. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, I'm sure you're going to ask me, is New York going to go red in 2024? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
No one
if it
does.
doesn't go red, like Trump has won the state of New York, I think it's possible, by the way. I do think it's possible. And I wouldn't have said that 4 years ago, but I think it's possible. But if that doesn't happen, is Trump going to come within 5 points? Is he going to come within 3 points? Is he going to come within 2 points? I think if he doesn't win, which again I think is a distinct possibility that he could win the state of New York, I think he's going to come within 5-6 points. And that would be a major, major, major thing for the Democrats. I mean, that's going to scare them to death. If he wins, it's going to obliterate them. But even if he comes within 5 points, that is going to scare Democrats real bad.
Well, and 2 points on that. The historic average since 1988 has been 23 points.
Mm-hmm.
If he wipes out a 23-point deficit in New York State and takes New York, and it's 27, 20 electoral votes? I think it's 27.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's New York State. That means Virginia is in play. That means Minnesota is in play.
Oh, yeah.
That means New Mexico, Colorado. You're talking about, I would even argue Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And Illinois, and much like New York, Illinois hasn't gone Republican in a presidential election since '88.
Yeah.
And you're seeing all the same things in Chicago that you're seeing in New York City. But let me speaking of congressional seats, you mentioned a minute ago, I had somebody over on Rumble ask me, had we gotten into the subject of George Santos yet? And I got to ask you about this. Okay. I did not know much about George Santos prior to his election. I knew he was a Republican. I knew he was coming from the Long Island area. And if I'm wrong on that, correct me. The Long Island area, New York City.
Long Island or Queens, I forget.
Yeah,
I think it's Long Island. I'm pretty sure.
Long Island.
By the way, disclaimer: George is. I know George personally, so
okay. No, yeah. I'm not going to speak ill of him at all. I mean, just and accusations were brought against him, and something very weird happened, at least from my perspective. And I never quite understood why. I understand the why, but I disagree with it profoundly. The House of Representatives, absent a trial where there was a jury, absent the presentation of evidence, absent everything else, expelled George Santos from his seat in the Congress. The first time since it had been done since I think the early 2000s with James Traficant of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there going, now, wait a minute. Would a jury have found him guilty of the things of which he is supposedly accused? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But what the heck are you doing throwing this guy out? I mean, when you talk to people, and I'm not going to ask you to divulge conversations you have with George. That's not what I'm leading to here. But when you talk to people in the Young Republican Club of New York or other people around New York City, what's the reaction to what happened to George Santos?
I think, obviously in Republican circle, first of all, the fact that there were Republicans who joined the bandwagon to expel him, that's ridiculous because, like you said, he hasn't been convicted of anything, nothing like that. Nothing. And he had one of the best voting records in Congress in terms of the issues, you know. His personal life, I don't know, and I haven't spoken to him about that, but he had one of the best voting records.
Yeah.
But it was like this whole, well, we can't be seen to support. Why can't you be seen to support one of your own? Right? Like if there's a criminal trial or whatever, that will be dealt with, But yeah, I mean, so like Republicans, it sucks for us because he had a good voting record. He was a
Yeah.
reliable vote in Congress. So, that sucks. I mean, non-Republicans, I haven't heard anybody with like a super strong opinion. Honestly, a lot of people think George Santos is like a funny guy. So like even like
Yeah,
liberals,
I
right?
didn't know that much about him, but I mean, I thought, hey, this guy is a character in the
Right.
best tradition of characters in Congress, in
Mhm.
that he's got a good sense of humor,
Yeah.
he's quick witted, he's
Mhm.
fun behind a microphone. I
Mhm.
mean, most congressmen just irritate me because they're so stinking bland. Not an
Mhm.
ounce of creativity, not an
Mhm.
ounce of color, nothing. They're just gray, cardboard cutout, plastic. Bleh. And
Yeah.
then along comes George Santos. Now I'm sitting there going, oh, this guy's going to be fun. But
Yeah,
it
I
just
mean,
kind of broke my heart.
yeah, I
It
mean,
really,
George is a fun guy. And like, but even that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters from like a political standpoint is, you know, is he
oh,
different little view
sorry.
there, is his voting record, because
Yep.
that's what's going to affect us ultimately, right? And
Right.
he had one of the best voting records in Congress, right? So, the fact that there were Republicans that jumped on the bandwagon to expel him is, I throw my hands up and I go, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? What? Really, like, you think you're that worried about being reelected in your red state, and like you think that they're not going to reelect you if you vote no to expel George Santos? You really think that I mean, I don't know if that's what they think, or do they think, are they, they're like, are they neocons, are they corporatists, and are there donors saying, you got to vote to get rid of this guy? I don't know. There's an interesting James O'Keefe just put out the other day,
Oh,
where
yeah.
he was like on a date with a staffer for actually a Republican congressman, and this staffer, if you take him at his word, says that there's a lot of blackmail that goes on in Washington. So, so if they have something on these people, and the edict comes down to, and I don't know, by the way, I'm not claiming to know. I just, I saw that, and I actually didn't think about it in the context of Santos. I just, I'm thinking about it now, like, but Santos expulsion vote, or any other kind of vote for a bill,
Right.
is it a are they being told what to do by some people who give down the order? This is how you're going to vote on this, this is how you're going to vote on that. Again, I don't know. I'm not in Washington, I'm not a politician, but it's it's a question. Or is it just, this is where your election campaign funds come from, and those donors are telling you, don't affiliate with this guy, vote to expel him? I really don't know. I really don't know. But the bottom line is, like, he had a good voting record, and as you said, he has not been convicted of any crime. So the fact that you just went ahead and voted to get him out was like,
Yeah,
it's just
just
it's just sad.
ridiculous.
It's just sad to see from Republicans. Of course the Democrats were going to vote to expel him. Of course
Yeah.
they were, like that. But guess what? Republicans have a majority in the House. So you needed some Republicans to pass that vote.
Yeah.
And with a Republican majority in the House, you just go, oh, decorum, decorum, oh, decorum, and you get rid of one of the Congress people with that has a great voting record in the House of Representatives. It's just sad. It's really, honestly, pathetic.
Yeah, it truly is. Truly, truly is. If you're just stopping by, my name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined by Matt Antar, who is a member of the New York Young Republican Club, and is also a content creator on YouTube and Rumble. Please subscribe to his channel, and while you're at it, give me a sub if you're not a subscriber. So let me do a Jen Psaki here and circle back to um, Donald Trump and this whole case that's before Judge Engeron And then also the case that was in front of Judge Kaplan, where he got whacked with an $83 million tag bill. Okay. But Engeron is the one I want to focus on. Much like a lot of things these days, with age comes perspective. In my case, I can honestly, I've never seen anything like this case in front of Judge Engeron. The Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, brings suit against Donald Trump, the Trump organization, claiming that he committed fraud. How? He inflated his financial statements to get better financial terms on loans. Now, here's the parts that amaze me. These were years ago. The banks aren't complaining about it. Trump paid back every dime that was owed. There is no appreciable or understandable victim in this. The banks aren't complaining. They made money. They made interest. The state of New York made interest off of the money that the banks made. Everybody came out of this smelling like a rose on transactions that happened 10, 15 years ago. Experts have been brought in telling the judge, hey, we knew exactly what the value of his assets were, and he probably understated what he was actually worth. And, I go back to experience I've had in a different line of work. There's no bank in their right mind that's going to loan multi-millions of dollars to somebody like Donald Trump, who's declared bankruptcy twice, by the way, and not know very good and well what the value of his assets are. Yet, in spite of all those facts, this judge is on the edge of whacking Trump for a $300 million judgment with the potential to take him out of doing business in New York City. Now, I'm not here to apostatize for Donald Trump. He's a big boy. He can do that all on his own. But my question is this. New Yorkers read the New York Post. Yes, they read the New York Times. And hopefully after they read the Times, they put it at the bottom of their birdcage. But anyway, they read the newspapers. They're talking to each other at their places of business. Can they honestly look at this and say, what in the world is going on here? This guy has done stuff for New York City that, we don't even think about that much anymore. I mean, do people look at Donald Trump as being the bad man orange? Or they like, yeah, this is a guy that grew up in Queens. He did all right for himself and he's getting screwed 7 ways from Sunday. What's your take when you talk to people?
I mean, again, it depends who I'm talking to, right? Like,
sure.
if I'm talking to a Republican or even an independent or an anti-leftist, who maybe if they're not a registered Republican or something like that,
sure,
even people on the anywhere right of left, basically.
Okay.
Even people who Donald Trump was not necessarily their first choice on the Republican side, every single one of them knows, to use one of Donald Trump's phrases, that this is a witch hunt. Every single one of them knows that. The only people who think that this is absolutely fair and just and the system is working are like leftist, or, liberal, like, can I curse on this show?
You can say whatever the hell you want. I don't give a shit.
Okay. I was gonna say the liberal, the pussy hat wearing people who went to Washington when Trump got elected. They all think, this is absolutely the process and blah 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 blah. Ignoring the fact that this is what, I think we're up to, if you combine the civil and the criminal trials, there's 6, I think now,
yeah,
all in the last year.
Yep.
The last year, meaning 2023, meaning that the bulk of these cases is going to happen when he's supposed to be campaigning. There's an order that just comes down for him to pay $83 million to this woman who no honest person believes that he sexually abused or whatever she claims he did to her. No honest person believes that. She's way too shady. There's too many inconsistencies in her story. She doesn't even remember half of the story, but yet there's an order for him to pay her $83 million, not even for the thing that she alleges he did to her, because he said he didn't do it, and therefore he defamed her, right? Mm-hmm. Which I've never heard of that before. I've never heard of somebody denying that they did some horrible thing that someone accuses them of as being defamation. So that was a new thing. That's a new thing for me.
That's absolutely crazy.
But regardless of any of that, he's got to pay $83 million. I mean, I'm sure he's going to appeal it and it's going to go through a process. Sure. But for now, the judgment is that he's got to pay $83 million to this woman. And, where's that going to come out of? Well, that's going to be assets that he could have spent on his campaign. That's going to be assets he could have spent trying to, secure enough votes for him to win the election in November, or I was going to say to win the primary, but that's pretty much done. But yeah, that's all of that. So they're trying to tie him up in litigation. Like I said, I think it's 6 if you combine the civil and the criminal actions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to tie him up in litigation, and they're trying to bankrupt him in the case of these civil actions. So they're trying to devoid him of time and resources, and they want to go up there and be like, we're the party that wants to uphold democracy, when it is very clear what they're doing. Like I said, even anybody who's to the right of left, whether they're in the center or anti-left or independent or whatever it is, knows that that's what's happening with these court cases. Even if they supported Ron DeSantis, or if they supported Vivek, or if they support Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or any of these other people that they would support for president over Trump, let's say, they know that this is what's happening with Trump, and they don't like it. They don't like it. So when you take all of that, when you take every non-leftist and include independents in that, I don't want to say every single one in the country, but a large majority of independent and or right voters that think that this is what's going on.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot left that are like, yes, absolutely, this is completely understandable and what they're doing, and it's because Trump did all these awful things, even though it's all happening now. Like you said, in cases involving things that he allegedly did 15, 20 years ago. Why wasn't it litigated 15 or 20 years ago? Why is it litigated now? Why is it being litigated in 2023, 2024? Why wasn't it litigated in 2008, 2009? Why now? And the only answer is because he is running for president again, and they don't want that.
Exactly.
So, anyway, so I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. It does. I mean, and the other thing that there's a pollster that I follow on a regular basis by the name of Rich Barris, and he pointed it out, and also attorney Robert Barnes, is that Letitia James doesn't realize the fire she's playing with, because if Engoron comes down with this set with his judgment about what Trump has to pay, and it is so egregiously over the top, New York businesses that have been there for decades, maybe even centuries, are going to look at that and go, hey, no way in the world we're staying here to let somebody like Letitia James come along and whack us with the exact same thing. They're going to start bugging out of New York City at a time when New York City cannot afford to lose any more businesses than it's already losing. You have major corporations that are resettling in other parts of the country. Why? Because the business climate in New York State and the city is so onerous They can't do business anymore between
Mhm.
between the non-monetary regulations, which really are costing them money, and the mandatory monetary regulations they have to live up to. It's like, we can't make money here. We can't do business. Our people are miserable. We're getting out of here. And Engeron's just about ready to just absolutely hose New York City over on this deal.
Well, I mean, I think you're right to a degree, but I think even more so is that they're certainly not going to decide to get into politics, or if unless they're Democrats,
Sure.
they're certainly not going to decide. I agree with the America First agenda. Particularly, I mean, they could get into Republican politics, I guess, and avoid most of this as long as they toe the Nikki Haley line, but they're not going to get involved in politics on a populist front.
No.
Maybe they're not even going to, if they're a big enough business, they may not even publicly support Trump or support America First or support MAGA, because are they a big enough business person to draw the eye of Letitia James, and then she's going to go in and try and look through their business dealings? I mean, this is again, I'm not up here to say that businesses who do bad things shouldn't be investigated. What I'm
Agreed.
saying is the timing of this with Trump is showing that it is absolutely politically motivated. It's not
True.
because he allegedly did this thing or that thing, because they could have investigated that 20 years ago when he allegedly did these things. But it's happening now. So that's the message of, don't you dare get on America First. Don't you dare try and run for office with an America First message. Don't you dare try and be independent and actually do something for this country, because we're going to take you down.
Yep.
And that's mob rule. That's not the rule of law. The rule of law would be investigate things as they cross your desk. But not, I'm gonna look through everything now because I don't like what you're doing on a political stage.
Mhm.
That's politically motivated, and with a judiciary that's not supposed to be politically motivated. They're
Yeah.
supposed to just apply the law. And this is, you don't go after your political rivals in a system that's supposed to work that way.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions and we'll start bringing this thing in for landing. My name is Brian Trippett on the Front Porch Conservative. I'm joined by Matt Antar of the New York Young Republican Club. And I want to ask you about the club. I get the sense, watching your guys' activity up there as much as I can, that there is a revival, for lack of a better word, of activity on behalf of the Republican Party in general, but more particularly conservative politics in particular.
Mhm.
And and as with anything, it takes time to see things move. But the election, the almost election of Lee Zeldin as governor in 2022, the fact that, according to polling right now, if it's to be believed, Donald Trump is within 9 points of Joe Biden in New York State. The election map for mayor when Curtis Sliwa took on Eric Adams. Granted, you're not seeing a lot of electoral victories right now, but I get the sense that organizations like the New York Young Republican Club are starting to make inroads and they're making a difference. Tell us about the club. What are you guys doing now? And also your role as chairman of the finance committee. And also, what do you guys anticipate doing, with regard to the 2024 election and even beyond?
Yeah, so the New York Young Republican Club is basically what it sounds like. It's a political club that's geared towards younger conservatives or Republicans in New York City, and it's headed up by the president of the organization, Gavin Wax, and his executive committee, and then I'm on their board of governors. So the club is really, I think the reason that the club has been successful, there's a lot of reasons, but we really speak to the average person, I think, in the city. This is
Let me
not your
let me ask you one question.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
When you say younger, what is the average age, or what is the age range of those who are members or involved with the New York Young Republicans Club?
So it's the you can be a member if you're over 40, but it's a different tiered membership.
Okay.
It's really the general membership is 40 and younger. Um, and then there's a different type of membership that you can join if you're over 40. It's tiered differently. You can go to nyyrc.com if anybody's interested in finding out more about the club. But yeah, that's an overview of like that. That's the young
Sure.
Republican club.
Okay. Okay. And what are you seeing as far as like growth in the organization? Are you seeing, is it plateauing, staying the same? Do you see people are coming to you like, I was a Democrat and I just can't do it. I mean, what are you seeing as far as like when you're talking to people your age or thereabouts, the age range of the Young Republican Club?
Yeah, I mean the membership is always growing. I mean, this is we just had a gala in December where
Saw
the
that.
former president attended, and
Yeah.
the former president, I mean Donald Trump, just in case anybody was wondering, Trump was in attendance, and I think that this what I was trying to say before is like the success is that I think this is not your average like hoity-toity hedge fund manager, stuffy Republican organization. We're really, I think that speaks to the average person in New York. I mean, that some of the politicians in New York that the club is uh, you know that has relationships with, they pretty much have like the same message, and I think that what the club has captured is that the Republican Party is more and more so becoming a party of the working and middle class.
Yeah.
It's not the Republican Party of the days of old, like I said, of like stuffy hedge fund managers and like big bankers and whatever. In fact, that type of class of people is increasingly going towards the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Um, so in a way, the Democrat, and I think the club was ahead of the curve on this, and I think and certainly that knowledge of that has paid off. But I think that the club recognized that trend, and that's why we've become successful. We definitely, the club is had endorsed Donald Trump like right away when Trump announced that he was running for president in 22, I think, late
Yeah.
2022.
Mm-hmm.
There was an immediate endorsement of Donald Trump. And again, that has the finger on the pulse of the Republican base. The Republican base wants Donald Trump to
Yeah.
be elected in 2024. I'm really sorry to the people who liked other candidates, but that's not where the base is. The base wants Donald Trump, and the club has been, understanding of like, where this is, and is absolutely been in favor of Donald Trump since Trump's first term. Has been very, very supportive of Donald Trump this entire time. And so again, I think the success comes because we understand what the average Republican voter wants right now. And like I said, it's increasingly um, a working and middle class party, whereas the Democrats are increasingly a professional class and like upper management and even C suite type party, which that's a minority of people who live in America. So good luck with that.
Yep.
I think that the average person, this is what I was alluding to all before, is like the average person, you're a regular everyday person, they know something's wrong right now.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
the solutions are increasingly coming from Republican voices and not Democrat voices. And I think that's been the trend for probably since probably since 2016-ish, it has been
Yeah.
going in that direction. Certainly, I know a lot of former Democrats switched to Republican for Trump's first term. I was not one of them because, I was living my life
Sure.
in New York, but, you asked me if I run into a lot of former liberals. Yes, I run into, some former liberals, some we've been conservative our whole life. There's a lot of people who come from different backgrounds in the club. We are close to 1,200 members at this
Right.
point. We're the I believe the largest young Republican club in the country, I believe. And yeah, it's there's a lot. Basically, what I'm saying is there's a lot of different you know there's a lot of different backgrounds and different types of people who come, but I think there's something for everybody who's on the right these days.
Very true.
We hold lots of events. I mean, if you're in the New York area, if you're not a member, there's fewer events available to you. If you are a member, that opens up the possibilities of events that are there for you. But yeah, I mean, I gave kind of an overview, but nyyRC.com, that's the website to check us out and see what we're all about.
Okay, so let me ask you two more questions. Where do you see, I mean, given the dissatisfaction of the average New Yorker, and where do you see politics in New York City going in the next 10, 15 years? I mean, do I expect New York City to become a bastion of populist conservatism? Probably not. Do I think it's going to be much more competitive? Personally, myself, yeah, but I'd like to hear, what do you think? I mean, you can see where the trend lines are going. You talk to people, you're walking the streets, you and your friends are walking the streets. Where do you see it going in 10 to 15 years in New York City?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that if nothing changes from politicians on the Democrat side, I think the trend line is speaking for itself. I think that it's just going to keep trending more and more towards Republican until at a certain point. And like I said, I do think it could even happen this year with the presidential election. I don't know, but I think it could. And regardless of when it happens, it's going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
because that's where the line is trending. So, ultimately politicians work for us, right? So
Mhm.
if they're not selling a bill of goods that we're buying on either side, then people are going to look for something else. And I think there's a lot of people in Washington that don't think that they work for their constituents.
Yeah.
They think they work for their donors, or they think that, and that might have worked for a while. That might have
Yeah.
worked for a while, but it's increasingly not going to work.
Yep.
And forget about New York for a second. That's increasingly not going to work anywhere in this country.
Absolutely true.
You have to. People are getting fed up, and they're going to start saying, "No, look, if you're not going to do what we're asking of you, then we're going to fire you." And that would be the case in any job that anyone had. Like, you work for a job, you don't do what your boss tells you, you get fired. Well, politicians, their constituents are the boss. So you don't do what your constituents tell you, you're fired. And that's what's going to end up happening. Like I said, there was a time when, the donor class could kind of manipulate things and get outcomes that they wanted. I think that time is coming to an end. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I'll give you one word of encouragement in your all's efforts up there, and this is from my home state of West Virginia. Everybody knows, or at least if you know anything about Southern politics, West Virginia from like the Great Depression going forward was a reliably Democrat state. Okay, it would go Republican in a presidential election. I think maybe Eisenhower in 56, Reagan in 80. No, I don't think we went. No, we did. We went Reagan in 84. Then the year 2000 came along, and then West Virginia did something that it hadn't done since 1928. It voted for a Republican in a non-incumbent year for the presidency. That was George W. Bush.
Okay.
Blew the minds of every Democrat leader in the state. And then what slowly started happening every 2 years, a congressperson who was a Democrat institution would lose. And then 2012 rolled around, but it was 2014. For the first time in 80 years, the Republicans took control of both chambers of the West Virginia legislature. And then ever since then, West Virginia, I mean, Bush took it in 2000, 2004. McCain took it in 08. Romney took it in 12. Trump took it in 16 and just blew the doors off in 20. My point is this. It takes time. The change is almost glacial in its pace, but it does happen. So, you guys up there, and I'm not, I mean, look, I don't necessarily, I mean, I know you're a member of the New York Young Republican Club. I want to see conservative governance. And if it just happens to be finding itself in the home of the Republican Party right now, so be it. And if that means that's what it takes to make New York a better place, not just the city, but the state, groovy. I'm all down for it.
Mm-hmm.
One last question. This comes from over on Rumble. If you were out at the RNC's convention in Vegas, are you voting for Ronna McDaniel or are you nominating Scott Pressler for the RNC chair?
Scott Pressler. I thought this was going to be a hard question.
Look, I try to be a man of the people. I got this question off of Rumble from one of my folks.
I appreciate the question from your folks, but I mean, really, no. I mean, Ronna McDaniel versus Scott Pressler. Scott Pressler is just really like doing the Lord's work, man.
That young man
guy is on another level of like he is like responsible for a lot of these counties and states flipping, and I know him personally as well, and he's just like the most fantastic guy in the world. Like you'll never meet a nicer guy than Scott Pressler, and he definitely would deserve that seat like far and away above Ronna McDaniel.
Well, tell Scott, and I'm serious now. What I'm about to say next, I'm Matt. I apologize for this, but since you opened the door, I'm going to use you. Get a message to Scott, and I'm serious. Tell him I want him to come on. I want to talk to the guy. I'd love to interview him. Yeah, please do. I mean, I've emailed him at least through his website, and he's probably getting like 1,000,001. But tell him to get in contact with me. I want to talk to him. I'd love to have him on here. So yeah, if you will do me that one small favor, I will genuinely appreciate it. But even if you don't, look, you are welcome back here anytime you want. You have been an absolute joy to talk to. I know we've been on different live streams and stuff together on different places, but this is the first time you've been here. Dude, you have carte blanche to come back on here. If you got something going on with the New York Young Republican Club or yourself personally or your channel, or you just got something burning on the brain and you're like, man, I want to go on Front Porch's channel and talk about, dude, message me. Come on back. We'd love to have you. You are an absolute joy to talk to. You've been a load of fun tonight. As we start to wrap this thing up, where can people find you on social media? What can they best do to help you? What can they do to help what you're trying to do grow?
So yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hate to tell you this, Brian. There's a small typo on the banner going across the bottom. It's youtube.com/@MattAntar.
Okay.
Like the @ Matt Antar. That's all right. I'm Mantar NYC on all the other social media. So it's Twitter and Instagram and all of that as Mantar NYC, MANTAR NYC. The YouTube channel, you can search my name, Matt Antar, or the link is youtube.com/@Matt Antar. So you can find me there. Give me a subscribe on YouTube, trying to grow my audience a little bit. The YouTube show is there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. There are actually breaks from politics sometimes on my YouTube channel. I do a travel segment where anytime I go on a trip,
watch some of those. I want to watch some of those.
we have a politics free episode that comes through, and it's when I go traveling. I love to travel. I love to talk politics too, as you all can see on this live stream. But sometimes it's fun to take a break, so I do document some of my travels on there. And then otherwise, I'm doing videos on political and cultural issues of the day. I do some interviews like this one, although they're getting less and less now because I kind of like the solo format of being a little selfish. But I will bring back some interviews because I do like doing these as well. So yeah, to support me, I would appreciate a subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram too, if you'd like, and Antar NYC, and all of that would be most appreciative. So thank you to your audience.
Oh, thank you. No, you've been an absolute joy. Folks, my name is Brian Trippett on the Front Porch Conservative. We're going to be back with another session of Chatting on the Porch next Wednesday, 7:30 Eastern. We're having a return guest, a good friend. I count him as a friend of the channel, Daniel R. Street, attorney at law. He has written some fabulous articles about the case that's going to be argued next week at the U.S. Supreme Court and Trump v. Anderson, the Colorado ballot case. And I'm crossing my fingers that I can pull something off. If I can, that means we're going to do something really special next week after that interview. I'm going to be back Saturday morning with Front Porch Brunch, where we do a review and comment upon the news. And Lord, have we got a lot of news to talk about. And keep your eyes open for more videos, more live streams, more interviews like this. We're going to keep doing it all year long because, baby, we're coming up. Matt, hang on for a second. We're going to say some proper goodbyes. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you Saturday morning, if not sooner. You guys be safe out there. And remember the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall. Remember, it's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, and more money.